students, it's Dr. Newmark here. This is your last highlights video of the semester. I apologize for the different visual and sound quality of this highlights video. I've already recorded this a couple times and I've been having a little trouble with it, but hopefully third time's a charm. In this video, we're going to cover the 4 articles that were the last ones in the course, and we're going to cover them all together in this single video. So hopefully it won't be too long in length. So the first one we're going to cover is Rebecca Walton's Supporting Human Dignity and Human Rights, a call to adopt the first principle of human-centered design. So she makes it very important in her article, the concept of the impact of embracing human dignity and human rights. These, of course, are issues of culture and power, and we've been talking about them throughout the semester. She is indebted to HCD scholar Richard Buchanan, and she wants to emphasize the distinction between producing products and producing communication, and the relationship between producing communication and human-centered design. So producing communication is clearly what technical communicators do. Manufacturing professionals and engineers, perhaps, produce products, and often technical communicators work at the interface between these two areas. So there's certainly a relationship between power and humans or users in the phenomena of the production of communication, and she's discussing that at the heart of her article. So I want to close this slide with this quote from Pringle and Williams, and that is the assertion that people are the ultimate end, not the technology. So Pringle is a pretty well-established technical communication scholar, as are many of these people, and in fact, I used one of his textbooks in a different class of mine. So Walton refers to this quote by Buchanan: "Design is the way we plan and create the complex wholes that provide a framework for human culture, the human systems and subsystems that work either in congress or in conflict with nature and support human fulfillment." So technical and professional communication as a field commits to human rights and human dignity. And if this is the case, TPC practitioners have to advocate for rights rather than merely analyze them. And that's something that's a bit thorny within the academic study of TPC. If we voice all of these commitments to social justice, is that simply about analyzing circumstances, or do we have to basically put our money where our mouths are and implement changes by working collaboratively with people in the private sector? Work in HCD and technical communicators' role within that can absolutely impact realities with consumers in the public sphere. So I have an image on the screen from Technical Communication, the journal. That is a publication from the Society for Technical Communication. Their readership is comprised of practitioners and academics. So this special issue that they were collecting submissions for through this last September was called Digital Interface Analysis and Social Justice. So there again, you see that it's a really crucial topic of consideration among practitioners and academics at the moment, how we speak to the relationship between human-centered design or interface creation, or content creation, and social justice. So TPC is vital in this work, in this interface, according to Walton, because we're well positioned in this field to combat forms of oppression that are expressed through inequitable structural and social constraints and divisions of labor, because TPC is always involved in crafting the communication that perpetuates or chips away at these constraints. So I often, in my own work concerning Bureau of Indian Affairs documents, I look at the report forms, the templates, as themselves the mechanisms by which power is conveyed, very much what Walton is expressing in this final bullet point here on this slide. So she definitely tries to engage both in the realm of international technical communication and community-centered technical communication through work such as the work she did in Rwanda concerning people's use of cell phones, youth use of cell phones in that context. And her discussion of that study, while it is very limited in this article, is still really interesting concerning human dignity and human rights. The next article in this batch is by Natasha Jones, Narrative Inquiry and Human-Centered Design, Examining Silence and Voice to Promote Social Justice in Design Scenarios. So she focuses on narrative inquiry. Narrative inquiry, she writes, conceptualized as a feminist research tool and useful approach to design, can help promote considerations of social justice and inclusion in HCD approaches. So she brings forward feminist research methodologies because they often are recognized as giving voice to people whose voices have been historically marginalized. So I ask you, about human-centered design, which, as she says, is not inherently socially just, how do we make it more socially just by implementing feminist methods and perspectives as a research tool? So narrative inquiry is another tool that she mentions here. It has an aim to bring forward narrative content from users who are part of a study or participants in a study and use that content as empirical data and narrative data. So providing a number of users, she says, the opportunity to share their stories, experiences, needs, and wants does give users a space to be heard and valued. But we also must, and this comes from the feminist methodological approach, be aware of the critical silences in that context. So we're going to jump right into Emma Rose. And please note that I'm not touching on every bit of content in this presentation. I'm going to share this slide deck in the notes below the YouTube video so you can go read everything on it in your own time. I'm trying to keep the video rather short. So Emma Rose offers these takeaways. Technologies embed existing inequities into their designs and risk further disenfranchising already vulnerable populations. So she talks about users of a bus network and a bus system in her home community, and she thinks of this as a kind of wicked problem. A wicked problem is one that is constantly shifting, contextual, social, and not easily solved. So how does Rose's work with bus riders who are experiencing homelessness demonstrate her approach relative to findings concerning the design of policies and systems? So this kind of work is necessarily socially invested and political in many ways. Relative to social justice and design, Rose and her team's findings indicate that, quote, members of this vulnerable population have deep experience when it comes to using the resource of transportation. The expertise is community-based and socially embedded, just as expertise in many of the workplace systems we study in technical communication are. So many technical communication researchers are used to doing research in a business environment, a workplace environment. So she's taking some of those strategies. So by focusing on vulnerable populations and understanding their unique perspectives, as she writes, we can help create more equitable access to services and systems. Now I'm going to close out this video by referring to the two individuals who are the editors of the special issue, Mark Zachary and Jan Spiridakis. And so they are both at the University of Washington, Human-Centered Design and Engineering Department. So what they express in their introduction to the special issue is that they were hoping by bringing these voices together that they could gain insight that would help them in their own program's development. So they write, a key point of discussion in these years has centered on whether HCD is different from user-centered design, focusing on the role of the user versus humans in these two frameworks. So that gets to, again, as I mentioned at the start of this video, some of these thorny issues. What is the difference between a human and what is the difference between a user in human-centered design or user-centered design? They ask, how does our field think about people and technology? So these questions are germane to their program, which is cited in an engineering department, and they're germane to people working in technical and professional communication in a arts and sciences college like we have at the University of New Mexico. So how does the special journal issue function relative to their program? How do the questions that it engages have importance for folks like us in a graduate course in usability and user-centered design? And how do these concerns penetrate into the private sector and the nonprofit sector? So on that note, I'm hopefully going to successfully complete this video for the third attempt. And I want to thank you for a wonderful semester and all the hard work you've put in. Thanks very much.